Again, welcome back to part 4. We are going to be in the school roster still, so SLDS Insight Profile and School Roster. And here we are under the pie chart. Again, pick which school you want to use. You might have multiple here. I'm going to stay in the elementary, and we are going to go to the student goal dashboard. Again, you are going to need your teacher packets, and we are on what I believe is page 9 under the student goal dashboard. So the first question we have here is, what is your average, minimum, and max of Lexile score in the subject area of reading? So what you're going to do is, so here I have NWEA, or I can pick STAR depending on which one I use. I have my assessment year. Right now it's on language. I'm going to switch it to reading. And then my most recent assessment, so would be fall according to here. I'm going to just leave all since that's the only thing that's in there. Okay, so now I have it switched out to what I want. If there was multiple periods here, you would go to the most recent, depending on how many times a year you take the interim assessment. So what is your average, minimum, and maximum is the question you're going to ask yourself and answer on your sheets. And here is where your Lexile scores are. So if you hover over, you're going to see your answer is right there for you. So the average for mine was 554. The minimum was 5, and the maximum was 1,635. So on yours, it's going to look different depending on your students' scores. The second question is, what is the average test duration? So here again, we have test duration, and it's right there for you again. So average 48 minutes, minimum was 7, and maximum was 208 minutes. So when we're looking at this, why does it matter? What are the things that matter when we're looking at Lexile score, when we're looking at test duration? Well, the obvious thing is we have a student here with a minimum of 5 and a student with a maximum of 1,635. How are 1635? How are we placing these students? How are we leveling out their education in reading? And how are we accommodating to those students? Did the student with a 5 have a reading disability? Did the student with a 5 have the time duration of 7 minutes? Because we all know that kids can fly through tests, and I know NWEA is good at kicking them out or booting them back out if they're going too fast and making them start over. But again, there are times where this does happen. With the student with 208 minutes, how did that student score? What do you know about that student's background? Are they someone that needs extra time to process but can do well? Is that something that's holding them up within the general ed classroom? How can we make those accommodations for those students? And our third question is, how can the knowledge of Lexile score be beneficial to a science or ag teacher, let's say? Well, we know that when we're looking at science, that students who have struggle with reading comprehension are going to struggle with science because it carries over through multiple classrooms. Reading is in every classroom. So if a student is struggling with reading and they go into the science classroom and they're expected to do science at their grade level without any accommodations or modifications on board, they are too going to struggle in science. But do they know the content? They just can't read. What are some things, or read well? What are some things that you can do as a classroom teacher or a science teacher to ensure that that student is getting the most out of your classroom? So it's important that we take these things into account. Same play for math. So if we have a student who is, for example, my own child is going into physical science next year as a 9th grader, she struggles with math. She is on an IEP for math only. She does not struggle with reading. However, physical science requires a lot of math components. So they're asking to do some applied science with her next year through her IEP due to the math component. It matters. So how are you as a general education teacher accommodating to those students that don't necessarily need an IEP for science specifically, but for parts of science? Okay, so that is, now we are turning to page 10 in your workbooks, and we are again going to be in the before we move on, I want to go through a few more things. Here you can click on actual reading. So I'm going to just click on this and it brings it out to just this goal. So now it's my reading survey with goal and the fall Lexile score. And it brings up just my scores within this goal. So it could be, and this is for each area. So if I want multiple areas, again, it's that click here. If I want to see my reading survey with goals for here and here, I can multiple click, and now I've got the average for both and where those students are individually in these two areas. And I can export that out, any of these out as well. Again, make sure you unfilter every time you filter something, or it will remain that way. You can switch it out to math or language arts, and you can use it to help within your math classes. How are we pairing up students? How are we making those accommodations? And again, here are your math goal surveys within this genre of math and NWEA. And you can export those out, bring them to your MTSS meetings, and maybe talk about the kids that are consistently falling in the low to low average area or are only missing certain skills. This will help you in those areas. Okay. So now I'm going to click out and I'm going to stay in that pie chart. And again, we're going to go to the Student Dashboard Explorer. It's the very top one. And in the Student Dashboard Explorer, this is an overall of all your students. It goes by disability, LEP, which is limited English proficiency, and then free and reduced lunch is your FRL kids. So if I were to click on free and reduced lunch right here, it's going to show me that I have 132 students that are currently free and reduced lunch and 582 that are not. Then I have my LEP kids and my kids with disabilities. It also goes by race, and it can separate out individually if we're looking for specifics in this area or grade level. So again, depending on what you're looking for, you can make this how you want it. So if I'm looking for, let's look at the question on number 1, again, top of page 10, says, how many students with disabilities does your school have? Well, I have it right here, 92. So if I click 92, I have now sorted out just those students with disabilities here. And I can, again, export this out. Now, with bigger schools, sometimes this is easier to have that on board versus smaller schools who typically know many of the students who are on IEPs. Again, when we're looking at disabilities in SLDS, this is not MTSS related students, and this is not 504 related students. These are students that are on IEPs only that are considered in this category. So again, I have them all here, and I can print that out should I need it at my next meeting. Now make sure you uncheck the filter because you don't want to just keep those students. But I can also look at, are there students with grades below a C? So again, I can go here and I can do uncheck all because I only want to know the ones that are below a C. And I'm going to click that in, and there are some of my students, maybe my 0 to 40 percentile students, but grades below a C, and I can look at what's going on. Is there an attendance issue along with this? Is there a late enrollment issue with a student? Is it a repeater student? What is it that is possibly causing the grades below a C? So I can look at their proficiency rate, their attendance, their grades below a C, and so on. I guess I can just click all of them if I want. And then when I go, now these are all sortables. So I can sort here. Now it's going to show me the ones that don't have any below a C first. And then I click again and it shows the percentage of students that are now multiple grades below a C. So I can again export this out if I would like to. And so on. So here we have late enrollment, and we always say in my training dashboard, we have 9. And we always say, why does it matter? Why does late enrollment matter? Well, many times we have students that come halfway through the school year, leave again. We have our migrant students who come and go. We have our students who are hopping around from school to school. And more likely than not, they're missing instruction, or instruction is different from the previous school where they have been. There is very few that come without gaps. So those late enrollment students are important. Again, I was doing a training not too long ago, and they came across this one, and they had no idea that the student that had come to their school had repeated a certain grade level. And so that made a lot of sense to them why there was a struggle with what they currently had. So there's a lot of good information in here. It's how you want to use it. You can curtail it to fit your needs for your MTSS team, and come to the table and go through it and discover what things need to be done and how you can do so. We are going to move on to the last part of this training, and then